Hello everyone, this is Fionapollo. Today I want to talk about Crackships because, let's be honest, who doesn't love a goofy ship that has absolutely no reason to exist? Why do I want to talk about this? Because, well, bear with me, it was my partner's birthday not long before this gets posted, and we were sitting in our living room, which is slowly turning into a 1960s time capsule, which I'm honestly loving, and I said to them, Rain, my darling, my sweetie pie, love of my life who I would do anything for, what would you like for your birthday? This was my first mistake. So I have my partner here. Would you like to describe your abomination that you've asked me to draw?
Art.
What is the art? What is it, Rain?
So it is Tony the Tiger and the Grinch, bare butt to the world in the style of Moulin Rouge.
I hope you're happy with yourself.
I'm very happy.
So then that ended up setting off a whole discussion around crack shipping and what ships we remembered being popular from our Tumblr days, and we had a good old giggle about the whole thing. My second mistake was saying I might do a video on this, to which Rain delighted in requesting I use their present as the speedpaint footage. So here we are. I would say sorry in advance, but I'm not. I'm really not. My only regret is allowing them to have this much sway over me. There are actually quite a few different reasons and ways that crack ships might come about and even become popular, and it's such an intently fascinating look into the human psyche that I couldn't help wanting to look further into it, so that's what we're going to do today. We'll be going into what crack shipping is, the history behind the terms, the culture surrounding it over the years. We'll even look at some prominent examples and more. The topic does have a bit of overlap with crossover ships and the evolution of fandom online, specifically on Tumblr, so we have all of that to look forward to as well. If you like the sound of that, then please consider liking, subscribing, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are there any crack ships you like or know of? Do you know why that ship exists? Is there a crack ship you love and that you either made up or saw that you just thought was pretty cool? Let me know. I don't know what kind of floodgates we'll be opening with this, and I really hope saying the word crack 20 million times doesn't get this video demonetized, but let's find out. To understand where the specific term comes from, we need to understand how shipping itself came to be known as such. The term itself is actually quite recent and rose to prominence alongside the rise of the internet, though obviously liking two characters in media being together isn't new. It became a much more recognisable phenomenon in the 90s when Mulder and Scully from the X-Files became especially popular and was one of the first pairings to be talked about on a very large scale and in an online space where internet communities were starting to form, creating a perfect storm of large droves of people being heavily invested in these two fictional characters' relationship status. With these new communities, language in the internet space was also developing, and we suddenly had all of these newfangled slang terms and such being thrown around. For example, fans of Mulder and Scully, and also other characters from all manner of different media being paired together romantically, began to describe themselves as relationshippers. And then over the years, this got shortened to shippers as we know it today. And with a label now assigned, it suddenly made people more drawn to the concept and better able to understand its appeal. And so shipping characters online ultimately exploded in popularity. That's not to say we need such labels for everything, but you'll find that people have an easier time understanding, relating to, and accepting a concept when they have a shorthand definition for it that is readily available. So with that in mind, what is a crack ship? A crack ship is essentially a pairing that is considered implausible, bizarre, or unrealistic in the realm of media canon. The term specifically comes about from how to have conceived such a crazy or outlandish idea, or in this case a pairing. You would have had to be sniffing the devil's dandruff because no normal person comes up with this stuff apparently. Honestly, that just kind of makes me think of those people with no imagination who look at a psychedelic painting and say, oh, what was the artist smoking when they made this? I don't know what this I don't know what that sound was. 8 out of 10 times, these ships are created as an attempt at humor. I mean, come on. Wouldn't it be hilarious if Captain America made out with Bugs Bunny? They're not meant to be taken seriously or have something that might actually have a chance at existing. They mostly just exist to give you a good chuckle. I think personally, my biggest exposure to this happening was back when I spent pretty much my entire teenage years scrolling through Tumblr. Honestly, thinking back on it now, I think Tumblr was probably one of the cornerstones for how certain ideas would catch on and spread like wildfire, and fan communities were so enthusiastic about giving it a fair shake that you ended up with some pretty interesting concepts and ideas. I think a good chunk of that boiled down especially to how during the early to mid 2010s, people were obsessed with the idea of crossovers. No doubt incentivized by the, at the time, new and exciting prospect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The first Avengers movie, releasing in 2012 in particular, gave a glimpse into what it would be like for people's favorite Marvel heroes to interact with each other that the notion just latched on for most, if not all, franchises and media formats across online platforms. At this time, there happened to be a lot of very very high-profile fandoms all existing and cohabiting a single space. Super Wholock, which was the combination of Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock, pretty much exemplified this idea of crossovers, which encouraged experimentation among fans, and it more or less eclipsed most of the fan communities on the site as well at the time. It's also probably not a coincidence that the Super Wholock fanfiction tag on AO3 was created in August 2012, 3 months after the Avengers movie came out. Why do I bring this up? Because fan-made crossovers means more opportunities for fans to concoct their own ideas of how characters from these franchises will interact, and maybe even become involved romantically, thus resulting in a crack ship. Though it is worth noting that what can be considered a crack ship in regards to singular pieces of media outside of crossovers can be subject to debate. Even two characters from the same franchise who have never interacted, hate each other, or have some other questionable relationship to one another can still be considered a crack ship. And it wasn't just live-action TV that experienced this either. An animated example is The Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons, which was a hugely popular one, focusing on Jack Frost from Rise of the Guardians, Merida from Brave, Rapunzel from Tangled, and Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon, all being put together as either a friend group, because not all shipping is or has to be romantic, or even a polycule. The fandom was also known as the Big Four, and just like many others, was also in its prime in 2012. 2012 was just a huge year for fandom, it seems, at least on Tumblr. A large component for this fandom's uprising was a mixture of good timing, the trends surrounding aesthetic posts at the time, namely putting animated characters in trendy clothing, and borrowing from other fandom ideas that were big at the time, such as the MCU, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Harry Potter. Rise of the Guardians also allowed these four characters to have kind of a central universe in a sense, due to the wildly differing time periods making it hard to pin other three characters in a place where they could canonically cross over. Guardians had a timeless setting in which all characters could safely land and exist. Popular ships in this fandom included Jack Unzel, Merikup, and Hejak. Other side characters in each film could also be paired up with each other, Astrid and Eugene being one such example, though I honestly can't bring myself to not cringe at that one, considering Astrid is around 16 and Flynn is canonically 26, though honestly it's not the worst one I've heard of within this fandom. The Big Four as a core unit was where a majority of the works tended to focus on, however, alongside the teen angst drama that was popular back in the early 2010s. Jack Frost, in particular, was very central to the crack ships of this AU, due to his design catching on to a specific popular aesthetic of the time, coupled with his angst-driven backstory. The fall of the fandom, however, was its oversaturation with the crossovers. Mavis from Hotel Transylvania, The Onceler, and of course, in the end, Frozen. Just a side note as well, this fandom also has a parody fandom, B Shrek Test in the House, consisting of the B movie, Shrek, Johnny Test, and Corey in the House. I hate the fact that Rain has exposed me to this. But yeah, overall, crack shipping has had a pretty interesting history, and it experienced a real high in the early 2010s when TV and animated films were producing some pretty high-profile stuff and were really on a roll. But why is crack shipping appealing? So why is crack shipping? So we've gone over what it is and a couple of big examples, as well as how exactly some may have swelled to have the amount of notoriety that they did. So now let's have a bit of a look into why this is done. Why the hell would someone choose to ship Omni-Man and Megamind? Stop laughing at me. Stop it. In the simplest explanation possible, it's because it's funny. You can't tell me the image of Omni-Man and Megamind mashing face didn't get a reaction out of you. I know it did. One of the key aims of fandom should be to have fun, and being humorous and indulging in ridiculous concepts, all in good nature, is one of the most surefire ways to do that. But at the same time, that might not be the only reason they're created. Just like most things in the world, there might be an obvious answer that fits most of the time, but occasionally other ones will creep up on you. Sometimes a crack ship might come about due to some external factors going on that are adjacent to the material or the people involved in it. For example, back in the day, there was a sizable number of people who shipped Jack Frost from Rise of the Guardians with Elsa from Frozen, purely because they have ice powers and have similar personalities and themes surrounding isolation. People just thought the two characters mesh really well, and honestly, from the fan art and ramblings I saw, I have to agree, and they also look pretty cool together. This ship is a bit of a contentious one though, purely because people also really like the fact that Elsa wasn't given a love interest in her movie and prefer to interpret her as being asexual or aromantic. But of course, this is subject to people's preferences, and let me just stress this, Elsa isn't a real person. If people want to put her in a relationship with another fictional character, they can. It's not a crime. What can also help to make a crack ship popular is if two characters actually have some canon interaction within the confines of an official crossover. So a few people watching might be too young to remember this, but in the 2000s, Cartoon Network had these bumper ads for the network between shows featuring a fully realized Cartoon Network city populated by the characters within CN's lineup of shows. Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Megas XLR, Fanart, Dexter, the list goes on. They were all shown interacting with each other, and it was just such a cool idea. But one memorable bumper was The Laundrette, which basically featured Johnny Bravo and Samurai Jack doing laundry and interacting with each other, and there was just so many homoerotic undertones, like I'm not even kidding. Jack didn't even have any clothes on. He was just in his tighty whities, and Johnny was just in a bathrobe. And then at the end it turned out that Blossom's clothes got mixed in with Jack's, and now all of his clothes were pink, and they knew. The people who put these bumpers together knew what they were doing, man, come on. But because of that one bumper and just how overtly gay it was, there is a decent amount of Johnny and Jack artwork and fanfics floating around. Something that can also happen is that fans will take prompts or cues from people who work on their favorite media, such as actors, writers, etc., to create ships based on things they say, just as a fun means of interaction. Yuki Aoi, I hope I say that right, the Japanese voice actor for Lumine in Genshin Impact, remarked that she would love to have a boyfriend who was similar to Sonic the Hedgehog, so fans rolled with this and began shipping the two characters together. It was a really cute example of fan interaction in a light-hearted way. What's also quite a common and really sweet thing when it comes to voice actors is that fans will often ship the characters of two VAs who are dating or married. One such example is Haru from Beastars, voiced by Sayaka Senbongi, and Denki from My Hero Academia, voiced by Tasuku Hatanaka. I honestly love these kinds of interactions because it feels like nowadays on platforms like Twitter anyway, voice actors and other people involved in franchises are kind of treated like punching bags for not having any sway over certain things to do with the characters they portray. Fandom is supposed to be all about community, but sometimes the bad apples can make it feel like that camaraderie has been diminishing slightly. One last reason why people might like Crackships, and this is from a more objective standpoint, but as someone who spends an unreasonable amount of time analysing behaviours and the hows and whys of fictional characters' interactions, I think Crackshipping is a fantastic exercise in figuring out what makes certain characters tick, and whether their behaviours exhibited in their original canon would hold up when faced with someone who has zero context of their experiences and traits. I think the best way I can describe this concept is if anyone watched Centaur World and saw how Horse's original world is very drab and fraught with danger, only for her to be thrust into a world surrounded by individuals she doesn't understand but slowly learns to come around to and develop bonds with. Crackshipping can be immensely helpful in allowing people to think outside the box and think critically about how they might interpret these characters' behaviours and actions. It's almost like a character study, and it can be super helpful for when you come around to developing your own characters to try and figure out how they would react to someone with a different personality, background, etc. When ventured with an open mind, it can be a truly boundless concept. But might we be on the decline? In recent years, it almost feels as if things have shifted slightly and Crackships are falling ever so slightly out of favour. Even when they only have the aim of being funny, people seem to either take issue or find them annoying more so now than they did a few years ago. I can't help but feel that this may be because we have become so saturated with crossovers and IP revivals that the hype to see all of these different characters who exist in completely separate universes and canons interacting just lost some of its appeal. It feels like the gimmick of it kind of wore off and people just aren't as invested or feel that these inevitable ships are so inevitable now. If a media conglomerate thinks that mashing two IPs together will rake in money, they'll do it. And that kind of takes away from the motivation and fun, I find. Not only that, but because of this, it feels like people just seem to be less willing to indulge in fandom. Everyone immediately demands their chosen media to adhere to their own individual wants lately that it's become less common to see fans creating all of these crazy AUs and fan art of characters that would never interact together in canon. It's quite sad, honestly, and the convenience of corporations trying desperately to appeal to fans seems to have caused a weird lapse in tolerance for when something isn't implemented canonically. Or maybe I'm just spending too much time on Twitter where the entitlement can be dialed up to 11, I don't know. What do you guys think? Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Overall, I think Crackships are fun, they have an interesting history in rising in prominence, and if you do have some kind of beef with them, just do what I do and blame Marvel. Stay safe everyone, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye!